Fitting the chainstays correctly between the dropouts and the bottom bracket shell is probably the trickiest part of building a frame. Getting the cranks, chainring, and tire to fit with enough clearance is challenging, especially for a mountain bike where you often want short chainstays and a lot of tire clearance. The chainstays also lock in the final bottom bracket height, along with the head tube and seat tube angles, so getting them attached correctly is pretty important. In this video, I'll be making the chainstay plugs, brazing the plugs onto the dropouts, notching the yoke for the chainstays, brazing the yoke to the bottom bracket shell, and lastly, I'll check and see if I got the alignment and clearances correct. The first task on my list is to make some plugs for the dropouts. Because the tabs on the dropouts are smaller than the untapered chainstays, I need something to fill that gap. So I make plugs out of 5/8 inch tube, cut slots in them, and braze them onto the end of the dropout. This makes for a much better fit between the chainstay and the dropout. I've tried a few different things over the years, and I finally have a slotting setup that I like. It's just a cutoff wheel mounted to an arbor in my lathe, so it's pretty simple. I've never been good at cutting slots in stays with a hacksaw. Maybe if I built more than one frame a year, I'd be better at it, but using the lathe gets me nice, straight, accurate slots. Once one plug is done, I cut it off and make the next one. A quick check that both plugs fit nicely on the dropouts. And then I use a handheld belt sander to shape the end of the plug. Once again, I'm using a 3M Cubitron belt. After I give everything a good shine with 80 grit emery cloth and clean it with isopropyl, it's ready for flex. This went pretty smoothly since both pieces are relatively similar thickness. It just takes a bit of extra preheating. And like usual, 20 minutes in some steaming hot water dissolves the flux. The next thing on the list is to cut the yoke arms to the correct length and notch them for the chainstays. The chainstays slip over the yoke arms, but I also slot the chainstays later on when I'm fine-tuning the fit. A quick cleanup of the dropouts with some emery cloth, and rounding the edges of the yoke tabs. Then using the chainstay drawing, I can trim the dropout end of the chainstays. And believe it or not, I actually do use a hacksaw from time to time. The next step is brazing the yoke to the bottom bracket shell, which means I need the jig again. I bought this Wizard dummy tire fixture a couple years ago, and with a little 80/20, it becomes a handy yoke holder. Here I am checking that the yoke is centered on the bottom bracket shell. Then I mark the yoke location with a Sharpie and put a punch mark on each side so I can realign the yoke after everything has been cleaned and fluxed before brazing. Like usual, I shine everything with some 80 grit, clean it with isopropyl, and add the flux. I start out by doing some large tacks while the frame is in the jig. Then move the frame to the park stand to finish the brazing. This was one of the most difficult things to braze so far this project. The thick yoke plates, the difference in wall thicknesses between the bottom bracket shell and the yoke, and the tight space between the yoke bridge and the bottom bracket shell made it pretty challenging. One nice thing about the yoke is that nothing is hollow, so there aren't any inner surfaces that need to be soaked. This means I can just pour the steaming hot water over the area to rinse off the flux. Like I said earlier, the chainstays lock in the bottom bracket height and the head tube and seat tube angles. What I mean by this is, if the angle between the chainstays and the seat tube is larger than it should be, the bottom bracket will go up relative to the axles, and the head tube and seat tube angles will become steeper. If that angle is smaller than it should be, the head tube and seat tube angles will get slacker, and the bottom bracket height will go down. Looking at my bike head drawing, the angle between the seat tube and the chainstay should be 67.2. The actual angle turned out to be 67.5, which is definitely close enough. There's plenty of wiggle room when fitting the chainstays to fix a 0.3 degree difference. Using the chainstay layout drawing from episode 4, I can see there's plenty of chainring clearance and tire clearance. I shouldn't have any problem fitting 29ers if I end up wanting to run larger wheels. In the next video, I'll finish fitting the chainstays between the dropouts and the yoke. If you want to see how the rest of the build goes, hit the like and subscribe buttons so you'll see the next video when it's published. If you haven't watched the other videos in the series, go check them out. Thanks for watching, take care, see you next time.